Morning,
Morning,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
All right. Um, so let me share the slide. Okay. So in the last class, we were discussing about groups, and we were discussing about the properties of a group. What are the characteristics that we have in groups, and which are important for group working? Uh, so we have discussed that one important property in a group is to have clear defined roles, and to have clear role perceptions and role expectations, and also to ensure that people have role identities, which means that people should be aware of their roles and also be able to relate to their roles. Unless roles are clear, groups will not be able to work in sync, and group functioning will be hampered. When I discussed so I've discussed all this. Then I discussed norms, that all groups need to have norms. Norms are some acceptable standards of behavior, some minimum standards that we have to set for group to work in terms of how we'll work, how we'll communicate, what are our goals. So some norms have to be developed. And then we had discussed, the concept of norms from human relations school. We had also discussed why sometimes norms may be detrimental to group working. So too many norms may not be good, but you still need to have norms, because if you don't have norms, it might lead to too much of conflict and too much of disagreements or dissensions, or even defiance, which will not be good. So some norms are important. So this is what we discussed about norms. Then we discussed about status, that every person in a group will not be equal. They will have different status based on their own personality, based on their own individual contribution, and so on. And it is okay, because you can never have a group where everybody has equal say or equal dominance or equal influence. So some people are more powerful by virtue of their personality, or by virtue of their ability, or the influence that they exert on others, and so on. So there will be some differences in terms of status. So it is fine. Of course, you cannot discriminate. You should not discriminate. Too much of status variation is also harmful, because if somebody is too powerful and somebody is too weak, again that will affect the group negatively. But little bit of status differences, if it is there, it is fine. It should be there, because anyway people are different, and we have to value those differences. If somebody is contributing more, if somebody is more competent, let him have some influence, let him have some power, let him have the freedom to assert, and the freedom to differ from the others, and so on. But too much of differences, too much of status variation, again that will also not be good. So status is acceptable. Then we have size. What should be the right size of a group? So size, it affects group's performance. If it's a big group, if it's too big a group, it'll become unwieldy, it'll become difficult to manage. So we cannot have groups which are too big. At the same time, if it is very small, then also the purpose of group work is lost. So it should be adequate size. Relatively large groups are better at fact finding or brainstorming. Relatively smaller groups are better at implementing specific tasks or specific projects. But still, you can't have too large a group or too small a group. So it should be adequate sized depending on what is the purpose of a group. Now, research evidences have shown that when firms want to do brainstorming, you know what brainstorming is. So when you want to just generate ideas for something new. So for brainstorming, a group size of 10 or 12 is fine. It's considered to be okay. But when you have a specific task at hand, a specific problem solving project, then smaller group sizes are preferred, like 5 or 7 and like that. So for specific tasks, we should have relatively small groups. But when it is brainstorming, broad, open decision making, just generating ideas, fact finding, then you can have relatively big groups. So research findings have shown that groups of 7, they perform better than the other groups. 7 was found to be a very good number for most work in organizations, in business organization settings. Nine also was a good number, but 5 or 7, 7 was perceived to be a better number. So 7 was found to be a good number for most groups. But in reality, we do have a lot of groups which are 5 in number and so on. Odd number groups do better than even. This is understandable why odd number would do better. So I believe you understand why odd number groups would do better, right? Mohammad Usman?
Yes, ma'am, because then people will pair up with each other.
I'm sorry? Then?
Ma'am, then people will make pairs.
What happens when you have an even number of group, 4 people? What is the problem that is likely to happen?
Ma'am, then there are equal number of, I mean, if there are conflict occurs, then there are equal number of people supporting a particular argument.
Right. So you need somebody, one person to at least, kind of intervene, veto or whatever. So odd number groups always do better. 4, so 2 people may say yes, 2 say no, then there is a deadlock. What do you do? But if you have one person, you have a 5 number group, one person can at least, moderate and kind of ensure or exercise a veto power or whatever. So odd number groups definitely do better than even number groups. And most studies have found that 7 is a very good number as far as group working is concerned. Now, when we talk about groups, there's an important concept which is called as social loafing that often exists in group work. Now, what is social loafing? Social loafing is a psychology concept. It refers to the tendency for individuals to expend less effort when working in a group than when working individually. And it is just against the very logic of group. What is the logic of group work? Why do we have groups? We have groups because we believe that when people work in group, there will be synergy. Everybody will contribute to each other's capabilities and there will be synergy. That is the idea of a group. We say 2 plus 2 will be more than 4, it will be 5 or whatever. So basically, in a group, theoretically, normally speaking, we say that when the group comes together, if there are 5 people who come together, then the group output should be more than the sum of their individual output. Because when we work together, there is synergy. We synchronize our capabilities with each other. So the output should be more than what we would have produced individually. But many a times, because of group size not being of the right number, and also because of other problems related to size and other issues, many a times synergy may not happen. And what may happen is just the opposite of synergy, which is called as dysergy. Instead of everybody contributing to the group and trying to maximize the output of the group, what happens is that people start spending less time and less effort in the group. And this tendency of individuals is called as social loafing, which goes against the logic of making a group. It goes against the very premise of group work. It goes against the foundations of group thinking or group working or the usual concept that we associate with group. So if you take a look at this graph, it says that the expected performance of the group was this green line, but because of loafing, the actual performance is this, the brown line. Now, what is this loafing? Loafing is the tendency for individuals to spend less effort, to put in less effort when they are in a group. What does this happen? Why does this happen? Why do you think social loafing happens? Because social loafing, as I said, is against the basic premise of group working. Group working says that we are coming together, so our output will be more than what our individual outputs would have been. But why does this happen? And social loafing is a common phenomenon in group work. You must have observed it in your case also. If, for example, sometimes somewhere your teacher gave you a group project in your school or college or whatever, maybe you might have seen this, that people are putting in less effort than what they would have done individually. Why does social loafing happen? Sana Fatima?
Yes, ma'am.
Why do you think social loafing happens? Naseem?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, they might think that the other person would do the work.
Okay. So what happens? That I think that the other person will do the work. That is actually one of the most important reasons why social loafing happens. But I think that why should I work? Maybe the other person is already working. So this is a tendency, a normal human tendency to believe that because he's working or the other person is working or she's working, so maybe I don't need to work that hard. What else? Arbaz Hafiz, are you here? Not here. So we could well mark
No,
you
ma'am,
absent.
here.
You are here, right, Arbaz?
Yes, ma'am. Because of the, ma'am, can I speak?
Yeah.
Ma'am, because the expectation from the co-workers are very high. Like they would do the work better even if we put less effort.
Okay. That could also be one reason. But that is almost similar to what we just now had. Kanishka?
Yes, ma'am. According to me, like when we are doing task individually, there is competition that we can do better than others. But in a group, there is not that kind of a pressure
Okay.
or motivation, we can say.
Okay. Now, so I'll put it in a slightly different manner. What you said, Kanishka. In a group, what happens is that usually accountability is less, whereas when we are working individually, accountability for results is more. If I give you an individual assignment for OB, all of you different, assignments have to be submitted. What will you do? You know that whatever you write, you'll get marks for that. You are individually accountable for your marks. So maybe you will put in effort or you will work hard because you want good marks. But if I make a group of 5 and I say that, okay, now all of these 5 people have to work on one assignment, what happens? We put in less effort because maybe I feel, okay, Kanishka is working or, somebody, Afra is working. So why should I put in that much of effort? They will do most of the things. This happens. Also because there is no individual accountability. Because normally, it happens. For example, when we give you a group project, so probably students believe that all 5 of us are doing the same project, we'll all get the same marks. So no need to put in so much of effort and so on. So that kind of thinking often comes in. When you don't have accountability, when everybody is working in, so everybody's responsibility is nobody's responsibility. So that kind of a feeling, perpetrates group working sometimes, and it hinders the very basic idea that groups should lead to synergy. So social loafing is this tendency to work less because people are not individually accountable. They are not individually responsible. They think if something happens, the entire group is responsible. So social loafing often happens, and it often happens because of size also, because of the group is so unwieldy, so bulky, so big, that everybody thinks, okay, let's just go on with the flow and so on. So this is why social loafing happens, and social loafing, as we said, is detrimental to the very spirit of group work. So why social loafing happens? It may be it could be because of a belief that others are not putting their fair share. So if she's not working, why should I work? That feeling is also there. Sometimes it may happen that, okay, let others work. They are putting in all the effort. It's okay. I have this feeling that I will also get the advantage. So somebody is working. So those kinds of complacencies may come in. Dispersion of responsibility, we just now discussed that everybody is getting the same marks. So why should I put in so much of effort? I will also get the same marks. So no clear accountability is there. No clear input-output reward relationship is there. So this is what happens. And then, of course, the tendency to become free riders. So because 3 people are working hard in an assignment, in a class assignment, 3 students are working hard or 2 girls are working hard. So, okay, others may become free riders. So those things happen. We often become free riders, and, we try to just benefit out of the other person's effort. So these are reasons why social loafing happens. And as I said, it's harmful for group work. So how to prevent social loafing? Now, the most important thing is that in a group, there are common goals. And at the same time, every person's individual goal and individual accountability should also be fixed in a group. So, for example, we have a class assignment of 5 people. So every person should be assigned specific tasks that they will do in the group. So one person will collect data from the internet, one person will compile a questionnaire, the other person will collect responses on the questionnaire, the fourth person may analyze the questionnaire, and so on. So we must, even within the group, we must have individual tasks specified for each person. Individual accountability has to be ensured. So individual targets should be there. Then it's important to promote intra-group and inter-group cooperation. Within the group also, it's important that leaders promote healthy competition. So although everybody may get the same benefit or they may get the same incentive, but yet some healthy competition is important. And at the same time, across groups, healthy competition is also important to make groups, feel motivated. So cooperation is a word which is formed by combining two words, competition and cooperation. So healthy competition. You need to cooperate also in a group, and you can be competitive also with each other. So it's fine to be competitive. So promote that kind of cooperation. Promote dialogue, team spirit, motivation. Let the group talk to each other. If they have any issues, if they have any differences, disagreements, let them speak, let them discuss, and let them sort out those differences so that every person then feels committed to the group. Then it's very important to have a dynamic group leader. Most of the things that happen in a group, right or wrong, they are because of the leader. So if you have a dynamic leader, if you have a strong leader, the leader will be able to steer the group in the right direction. But if you have a weak leader, probably the group will fall apart. So it's important to have a good, dynamic leader. Then it's very important that you identify individual effort in group. If as a teacher, I give you an assignment and I give 5 people in a group an assignment, I should also ensure that all these 5 people make individual presentations, or I should ask them questions to know how much each person has actually learned out of that exercise. And then I should give them marks based on their individual effort and contribution. If I give all of them 6 each, then in that case, somebody who might have worked harder than the others will feel demotivated or probably not feel rewarded for the effort that person might have put in. So even if they're working in a group, it's important to identify in each person's contribution and then give them some additional incentive or reward based on their individual contribution. So it's very important to fix, even within the group, individual accountability and individual merit has to be identified and appreciated and rewarded. And of course, have an appropriate group size, because too large groups have these problems. So it's important to have the right size based on the problem that you are handling. So class assignment, 3 people, 5 people, okay. But if I give one small assignment to 15 students, probably that's not the right way to give assignments. So we have to rationalize on the group size also. So that was about size. And then now composition. Who should be there in a group? Group demography is very important. And in recent times, in the last few years, as far as group working is concerned, maximum attention has gone to this particular characteristic, composition and demography of a group. So size and status and role, all of those things are important, but maximum research, maximum attention has gone to this very characteristic of a group, which is composition or demography. Who should be there in a group? That is the most important question to address. So you can very easily decide 5 people or 6 people or 7 people. Those things are easier to decide. But the most difficult question and the trickiest part of formulating a group is who to have in a group. Now, how do organizations decide who to have in a group? Who will be there in a group? How is it decided? Can somebody reflect on that? How do organizations decide who will be there in a particular group? Is there some kind of theorem, some kind of logic, how organizations assemble groups, how they make groups, how they decide the composition? What happens?
And sometimes groups are made on geographical location.
Geographical location. Okay, what kind of groups are they? Are they called? Is there some name for that?
They are divided in 5 zones, for example, north, east, west, central, and south.
Okay. Now, traditionally, most business organizations, what reasoning they followed for designing groups? What was the traditional philosophy or the traditional idea of designing groups?
Ma'am, a group should contain all the members of the organization. I mean, all the sections should be covered, like male, female, and geographical area, and all of members from all the sections should be present in the group so that no one can be feel neglected or left out.
Then how to ensure that everybody, all the sections are there, then that will become a very large group. But my question was different. My question was that traditionally, what was the logic of formulating groups? What was the basis of formulating groups? Traditionally, what basis organizations followed for formulating groups?
Same type of people in a group.
Same people. So same people means what? Same on the basis of what?
I'm having the same attitude or characteristics.
Afra?
I'm having the same characteristics and attitude.
Same characteristics and attitude. What characteristics? Laiba?
Same thinking attitude or same thinking. Yeah.
No, it's very difficult to actually, make a group on the basis of thinking and attitude, because those are slightly difficult constructs to decipher. So traditionally, organizations formulated groups on the basis of functionality, functional areas. That was the traditional philosophy. That somebody, people in the marketing department, groups will be formed within that. Then people in the HR department, if we want to make a group, then there will be groups within that department. So basically, on the basis of functional areas, functional skills, organizations were grouped on the basis of functional expertise, marketing group, HR group, operations group, and then subgroups within that. So within HR, you could have a training and development smaller department, or you could have a performance appraisal department, or you could have a rewards and compensation team, which is looking after rewards and compensation, right? Or a recruitment and selection team, which is looking after recruitment selection. So mostly groups were designed on the basis of functional characteristics, functional skills, or functional areas, right? As we call them, departments. Traditionally, they were called as departments. This was the traditional concept. When organizations were very simple and small in size, gradually as organizations became bigger and bigger and they became multinational in scope, then a lot of this functional was happening, but they wanted other kinds of groups also. So they started having groups on the basis of, as somebody said, geography or countries. So you could have a division in one country, or you could have a division in another country, or you could have subdivisions based on different parts. So for example, India is a big country. So an MNC which was operating here could have a North Indian division or a West Indian division or a South Indian division and so on. So primarily geography or customer groups and so on. Sometimes smaller geographic groups were clubbed under a bigger geographic group. So for example, South Asian market, or, Southeast Asia, or Asia Pacific region, and things like that. So or Middle East. So larger groups were formed on the basis of that. So anyway, geography or market was the idea. But now business organizations are thinking of other concepts as far as group working is concerned, because now a lot of smaller temporary groups are being formed in business organizations, which are given some task, and they do those tasks, and once they complete those tasks, they come back to their respective department. So a lot of smaller, more diverse kind of groups are being formed nowadays in a lot of business organizations. So the group demography is changing a lot. So what is happening is that these smaller groups, they are primarily temporary in nature. They are formed for a certain task or activity, and once they complete their task, they go back to their respective departments or divisions. Again, tomorrow if needed, again they form some other group, and again they work on some project, and once the project is completed, they go back. So these are temporary autonomous or semi-autonomous groups which are formed keeping in mind a lot of diversity. As somebody said, that now we are trying to promote a lot of cross-functional groups, diverse groups. So you must have a person from HR, you must also have a person from, let's say, marketing, another person from quality control, another person from maybe operations department or somewhere else, somebody from IT team. So a mix of people from different functionalities, different functional capabilities, they are brought together because we want people across functional areas to share their skills. And it is now realized that you may be an HR person, but you also need to know marketing. You also need to know finance, little bit of finance and marketing and operations and everything. Only then you will have a broader perspective. And I think I've discussed this in the first unit also, that traditionally business organizations used to have departments and managers used to be cocooned in their departments. So HR people only doing HR work, marketing people only doing marketing work, only interacting with marketing people in the department. Even physically, they were away. Marketing department is in Delhi, HR department is somewhere in other city. So they are never even meeting or interacting. And in those times, internet was also not there for, virtual teaming up and all that. So they were not even physically meeting. So what is happening was that they were all cocooned in their separate functions. But now with IT and with all of these things, now companies are creating lot of diverse groups. People from different departments, different areas, different levels, different functional skills are brought together for a particular problem solving, activity. Crack teams, as we call them, task forces, they are being designed for sorting out different problems, for improving quality, for improving efficiency, for various other activities, for brainstorming. And thereby the idea is to let them share their perspective. So let the marketing person also know the HR manager's perspective. Let the marketing person also know the operations manager's perspective. Only then there will be, a broad idea sharing, and people will have a larger vision of the problems that they are facing. So it's important to have these cross-functional teams. And in the last 10 years, and more specifically 5-6 years, a lot of emphasis is now being laid on creating of these cross-functional teams. At the same time, there's a lot of focus on creating diversity on the basis of individual characteristics, diverse teams on the basis of individual characteristics or demographic characteristics. For example, in a team, you must have people from, different age groups or gender-wise, or maybe nationality-wise if it's a multinational corporation. So based on various kinds of individual demography and other characteristics, we are trying to now have groups which are diverse in terms of levels, in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of whatever background, in terms of skills, in terms of nationality. So we are trying to bring in people together. And the more diverse a team is, the richer it is in terms of thinking, richer it is in terms of brainstorming, idea generation, because diverse teams, they bring in diverse ideas, and different ideas, they help the group make creative decisions, innovative decisions. So that is why a lot of emphasis is now going on creating groups which are diverse, which have a varied demography and composition. So this is what we mean by group composition. Now, and I'll be coming to a few questions before I take up this also. So group cohesiveness. Now, the important thing is that even if you have a diverse group, at the same time, you have to ensure that it is cohesive. Diversity does not mean that they're all thinking in different directions. No, they have to pool in their ideas and then work synergistically, cohesively. So cohesiveness is still important. Despite the fact that you have a diverse group, norms are still important. And all of these things together, they lead to productivity. So cohesiveness and norms, they are still important. Despite the fact that you may be belonging to different age groups or different levels or different skills, you still need to have cohesiveness. Your group should think in a way, they may think differently, but ultimately the purpose is to go synergistically. So there must be some common norms, there must be some cohesiveness. And this obviously will be the responsibility of group leaders to ensure that cohesiveness is there. Now, what are the problems? I just now said that diverse groups bring in more creativity and better ideas and more creative thinking. What are the problems of a diverse group? What kind of problems could be there in having a diverse group? Wakas?
Conflict of opinion.
There could be possibly conflict of opinion, because the more there is diversity, the more there will be different thoughts. So conflicts will be there. Chances of conflicts are higher in diverse groups. What else? Other problems? What could be the other
Generation
problems?
gap.
Generation gap.
Ma'am, there is a status issue might be.
Status issue might be more pronounced. Okay, generation
Yes,
gap.
ma'am.
Vakas, you are saying something?
Now, I was saying, ma'am, if the group consists of someone who is a senior in the in terms of experience or something, and then he is clubbed with someone who is a fresher in the field from the other field, obviously. So it might be some status conflict. Like you might feel like, okay, he's being like downgraded or something.
Okay. So it happens when you have people from diverse backgrounds coming together in terms of age or whatever levels or designation or experience. There is bound to be some kind of conflict, or chances of conflict are higher, because obviously a person who is more experienced might think that he knows better or whatever, or she knows better. So differences will be there. Or a person from marketing department interacting with HR or operations might think he knows marketing better. Operations person will think he knows the organization better, and so on, because they have different ways of looking at problems. They have different perspectives. So chances of conflict are definitely higher in diverse groups, and cohesiveness is difficult to build in a diverse group as compared to a uniform group. So if you have all people from the same department, they are bound to be more cohesive. They are likely to be more cohesive because they are coming from the same background and with the same perspective, and so on. The moment you have a diverse team with people from different backgrounds coming in, different skills coming in, different functional abilities coming in, obviously they will have difference of opinion, and difference of opinion is likely to create conflict. So diverse teams are creative, diverse teams are more innovative, but they are difficult to handle, and not all organizations can handle diverse teams effectively. So handling diversity is definitely a difficult proposition. Organizations need to have a lot of effort going into creating effective diverse teams. It requires a lot of trust building. It requires a lot of a collaborative atmosphere, strong cultural roots, so that kind of trust and cohesiveness can be created. So it can't be built overnight. It can't be built in one day. It requires a continued effort of creating trust, building trust, confidence building, leaders playing a very effective role, training people, giving them a lot of coaching and guidance so that they understand each other's perspective, and most importantly, as we said, creating a culture where people value each other and they respect each other and they value each other's attributes and behaviors and differences and different points of view and each other's capabilities also. Most traditional organizations are very rigid in this cultural openness, and that is why diverse teams don't work very well in traditional, those traditional kinds of hierarchical, rigid organizations. So you need to have open communication. You need to have a flexible setup. You need to have flatter hierarchies. You need to have continuous emphasis on teamwork, promoting teamwork, encouraging teamwork. Team trainings have to be given. Team motivations have to be there. Team incentives have to be there. Rewards have to be built around that. So everything that you are doing has to be so designed that it becomes supportive of this kind of a culture. Otherwise, as we said, it is a difficult idea to create diverse teams, and often diverse teams may falter or fail. This particular matrix only shows the relationship between productivity on the basis of cohesiveness and norms. So if cohesiveness is high in the group and norms are also high in the group, naturally productivity will be high. But if cohesiveness is low, norms are low, productivity will be low. So it basically shows that we have to ensure that groups, despite the fact that they have different demography, they are still high in terms of how they come together and how they work together. So cohesiveness is this characteristic of ensuring that despite differences, despite diversity, people still relate to each other because they are part of one organization. They have a common ethos. They have a common way of thinking, a common strategy, a common goal, and pride in the organization, commitment to the organization's goal, and thereby, despite differences, they still feel that they are together and they are one. There is some cohesiveness which is there. That leads to improvement in performance. So this is how cohesiveness is important, and how to increase group cohesiveness. Again, have a reasonable group size. If it's too big a group, it will be difficult to build that kind of cohesiveness. So have a reasonable group size, have agreeable goals. Let the group decide what goals they really want to have. So obviously larger goal will be decided based on the organization's prerogative, based on the organization's imperatives. But within that, smaller goals can be set by the group itself. How they want to work, when they want to work, how much time they want to put in, who will do what work, how resource will be allocated amongst all these 5 or 7 people, how tasks will be divided. So that should be up to the group. So for example, as a teacher, I can make a group, give you a class assignment, but now I should leave it to you to decide how each person will contribute and you will work and who will do what work and so on. So have agreeable goals, goals which are acceptable to everybody, and where maximum output can be generated out of everybody's effort. Increase group affiliation. It's important that everybody feels connected to the group. So I should feel connected to my group. If I am disconnected, I cannot contribute effectively. So group affiliation has to be strong. Everybody has to feel connected. And in the previous class, when I was discussing the 5-stage model of group development, I discussed the 5 stages, and I said that in a lot of instances, a lot of time and energy and effort goes waste in the storming stage and norming stage. So the group has to ensure, the leaders have to ensure that minimal time goes in those stages and maximum time goes in the productive work of the group. Stimulate competition and reward performance. Within the group also, there must be competition. It's good to have competition because competition brings out the best in us. But healthy competition, not competition which which stifles creative thinking or which is detrimental to the cause of the organization. Not that kind of competition. Good competition, healthy competition, and increase the time that members spend together. It's important to spend time. It is said that a lot of productivity depends on the camaraderie that the group shares with each other, the members share among each other. So when they talk, when they communicate, when they laugh, when they spend time together, that builds a feeling of group work, that builds group camaraderie, as we say, and that leads to higher productivity. So it's not just about assigning tasks and making everybody work. It's important that they spend time. It's important that they just talk to each other. They just communicate, just have fun sometimes, just maybe sit together and have a cup of coffee or something and discuss out a lot of things. And then that helps in building trust. That helps in connecting. And when the group members, they feel connected to each other, they're able to contribute more. So, for example, physically isolate the group for some time. What is this? Do organizations physically isolate groups? Have you heard of this? It's a common practice in a lot of organizations today. Before coronavirus happened, it was a common practice. Physically isolate the group for some time. What is this? How do you physically isolate the group?
So that they can know each other. They can know
So
each
how
other.
do you do this? How do you do this? How do organizations do it? What does it mean, physically isolate the group? Sorry, Sabha? Meetings. So, okay, meeting, but what do we mean by physically isolating? The meeting can be held in the same setup. Why physically isolate? Nazeen Khan?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah? Oneza? Rafia? Yes, Oneza. What do we mean by physically isolating a group? in a lot of cases, what organizations are doing now, but of course, prior to this COVID thing, they were sending groups on outdoor trips. So, people are going in a group for whatever picnics and outdoor activity and water sport and adventure sport and trekking and all those things, mountaineering and things like that. The basic idea was to send them outside the typical setting of an organization, because when you go out for a picnic or a tour or a company get together outside, there's a different environment. You are maybe in an adventure sport or something, and you may be spending time together, camping somewhere and so on. So you spend time together, and when you spend time together, many times a lot of those initial inhibitions and initial differences which are there, they're sorted out, and there's a lot of ice breaking that takes place, and then the group starts understanding each other. So physically isolating the group it had become a common strategy in business organizations for critical activities. Not that every group will be sent outside because it's a costly proposition, but for critical activities, for very important tasks, organizations used to physically isolate the group and give them the advantage of going out, traveling somewhere, spending some time out, eating out, whatever, dining out, so that they meet in a different environment. And when they meet in a different environment, it's more informal. And when you meet in an informal environment, you understand each other better. You get to know each person's capabilities and competencies and how they work and their style of working and so on. And then when the group comes back, maybe they work in a better, atmosphere, because they have understood how each other's style of working. So in a lot of cases, groups are sent to physical isolated locations. When I say isolated, different location from the usual office setting. And the purpose is to make them understand and then come back with renewed understanding of how the group is, and then work on mission critical tasks and important activities. So these are important ways where organizations try to create synergy in groups, create cohesiveness in groups. So this is what I think I should close now. It's a Friday. So this is what various properties of a group basically are. So right from roles to status to norms to size and then cohesiveness, these are all important characteristics that groups need to have, and we have to ensure that those characteristics are taken care of, and their leaders especially, they make efforts to ensure that these characteristics, they exist in a group in the right perspective. In the next class, I'll take up how group decision making takes place and what are the different forms of group decision making. So maybe one more class I need for this group topic, and probably that will wind up. Okay, so we can close now.